One of the most common questions I get is about vibration, and it involves when a student of magic lives with other people, and essentially that student of magic is shy about doing the ritual vibrations and incantations. And they will have probably read somewhere, oh, I heard of this thing that you can do called the Great Voice. So I can simply vibrate internally. I don't have to vibrate out loud. By vibrate, I mean chant and drone out a word of power. For instance, Iao for Tifareth. Iao. Not really so complicated. But to do it loudly, which means that somebody in the next room will be able to hear you. Now, if you live in a situation where that's going to freak somebody out, then don't do the magical work. Do something else. Okay, take up Zen, or take up the practice of dream yoga or something like that. Okay, part of the test of being able to do magic is that you do magic and that you basically be able to use the full voice. That means you need to be able to dramatically act things out, and we're going to talk about this. So the topic this week is vibration. All right, and as before in my previous videos, we talked about the hexagram ritual and that the hexagram symbolizes the active and passive forces of creation. Now, in terms of vibration, vibration is like a back and forth thing, or in this case with the hexagrams up and down, right? Interesting thing about Tantra is that Tantra, one translation of the word Tantra means weaving or the weave. And there's a warp and a woof. And so if you have a cloth, there's going to be like threads going this way, and there are threads going this way, the warp and the woof. And kind of what that symbolizes in terms of Tantra is that vibration happens in patterns, in overlapping patterns. Like if you throw two stones into a lake right next to each other, they make ring patterns, right? And then those ring patterns spread out, those vibrations spread out, and then they overlap. And the overlapping of those vibrations creates interesting forms and patterns. Now that is a very simplistic way of looking at manifestation. So in other words, the universe and everything around you consists of interweaving vibrations. Many, many interweaving vibrations on many different levels of perception or existence, okay, on different planes of existence. And so the concept of vibration in Tantra, it's known as spanda. There's a great religious text out there called the Spandakarika. One of my favorite Eastern sacred texts. It's from Kashmir Shaivism. Okay, and like I've said before, Kashmir Shaivism is one of those traditions that has not had much debasement. Most of Western occultism has been debased. It's been mistranslated and marketed and turned into other things. But originally, it appears to have arisen from more authentic forms of enlightenment practices. Okay, now being able to vibrate your names of power and ritual out loud is important. So the only thing I might advise is that, like if you're traveling, for instance, I had to spend a couple of nights away from home because they were fumigating my condominium here. And so I decided to stay at one of these, I guess, with these little houses where you can rent a room. So I basically just packed a bag and then stayed at this house for a couple of nights. And while I was there, the first night I had the whole place to myself. Pretty cool. The next night there was a woman who rented the room next to mine. And of course I was doing some ritual work. And so I did. Rather than freak her out and vibrate with full voice, I toned it way down. So she probably couldn't hear it. Okay. And I consider that fine. But most often you want to vibrate with full voice. If you live with someone that you think it's going to disturb, do a reality check. Are you simply embarrassed? Are you ashamed? That embarrassment or shame needs to be worked through. I've been here before. I've had roommates, okay, and when I moved to South Florida, I really couldn't afford any housing down here. It's very expensive, not for a while anyway. And so I had a couple different places where I lived where I was simply had a room. This was years ago, but and I was doing the outer order work. So I had no choice. I had to vibrate with full voice. So before I moved into these places, I scoped these people out and I told them I'm a tantric Buddhist. Is that a lie? I don't know. I resonate very, very nicely with tantric Buddhism, so it was fine with me. Was I doing tantric Buddhist practices? No, I was doing the Golden Dawn practices. But if I told them I was doing magic, that might have upset them. It's like, who is this person? But I told them I was doing, chanting as a tantric Buddhist practice every day. And I worked out a time when I could do it with them, so I wouldn't disturb them, but they'd be able to hear me. And they were always very open-minded. The only obstacle for me was that the first couple of times I did it, back then I did ritual at night. The first couple of nights I did it, I was very self-conscious. It was not a very good performance, not a very good ritual, because I was worried about are they going to come banging on the door or something like that. And it was fine. It was fine. And I made a point of actually going out and washing some dishes or something like that after the performance was over to check with them to see if they were okay. They were perfectly fine. One of them asked me some questions, and I sort of avoided answering the questions. I said, it's kind of private, the stuff I do, but do you have any concerns about it? I asked them, I turned the questions around at them, like whether they have any worries or concerns about it, because I know it sounds weird. Just to clear the air, be very diplomatic, and you can still keep your magical practice secret. You don't have to tell them what you're doing. You just, explain it to them so that it'll put them at ease. Okay, so these things are not so difficult to deal with, usually. If you're living with somebody who simply can't tolerate anything weird at all, what are you doing living with them? Get away. If you can't get away, like it's your husband or your wife, then don't do this work. You're in a situation that doesn't allow for it. Okay, if you can't vibrate with full voice, then don't do the ritual work. And of course, the interlocking triangles are the two different levels of reality. In Golden Dawn, the upright red triangle and the down pointing blue triangle are fire and water. But these can be just seen as all opposing forces, the forces that exist at both ends of a spectrum, and there's a vibration happening between them. Do those two things exist? Not really. It's the full-bodied spectrum that exists, and the upper triangle and the lower triangle simply appear to exist, but they are simply two ends of a spectrum of vibration, or a continuum, two ends of a continuum. Now, the first time I saw Jews at the Wailing Wall doing something called shuckling, I recognized immediately what it was. Okay, this is my opinion. Okay, and shuckling is where they are praying at the wall and they're sort of rocking back and forth, maybe like this, or from side to side. Okay, and there's many opinions about this. Some rabbis are against it. Some of them don't mind it. Many of them are say it's actually a good practice. But what I noticed is that, this is a vibration. Okay, and when you have two ends of an extreme, two extreme ends of something, it sort of helps you triangulate in on the center. Okay, like many people say, it's very good to be balanced. Well, what does balance mean? I'm pretty critical of that. Like, in other words, if you're like, you should have a balanced diet. Well, okay, but if I'm going to establish some kind of balance, where do you want me to put the fulcrum of that balance? Where is the center of that balance? If I want to have a balance between protein and carbohydrates, should I do like most people most people who supposedly eat a balanced American diet eat mostly carbs, and that's supposedly balanced, with vegetables and fruits and grains and stuff like that. They eat mostly carbohydrates. I don't consider that balanced. Okay, I consider carbohydrates for the most part to be, in large amounts, to be poisonous, actually. But anyway, that's a topic for another video. So where does that balance point? Where is that established? And so this sort of shuckling or vibrating or shaking. This is the origin behind the Quakers and the Shakers. The Christian Shakers and Quakers also would when they're filled with energy, they start oscillating or vibrating or doing, and in the extreme endpoints of that vibration, this is sort of helping them triangulate in on some kind of center. Okay, and it's important not to take that center so literally. Okay, so like if you're going to have a balanced diet, there's many different center points for that balance that you can establish and be healthy. Okay, all kinds of different diets you can have, and all kinds of different states of consciousness that you can have that could be considered balanced. But in order to work your way into that balance, it can help to experience vibration or oscillation. Okay, so shuckling is a really nice graphic example of that. I really should have embedded a little video here so you could see the rocking back and forth, or I think this guy was going back and forth like this. And so with vibration, you have a back and forth motion. All right. And so when you have sort of a vibrating syllable going on, various images can arise of what that might look like. Okay, here's one of them. Like if you hold a guitar upright and you pluck one of the strings, that string is not just going to stay vertical, it's going to go back and forth. Like, and of course it's going to bow this way and that way. It's going to do this, right? It's going to have these wave patterns, this wave pattern going on. And so here you have the Vesica piscis. The Vesica piscis, and so the can be seen as two ends of a vibrating, two extremes of a string in vibration. Okay, or two extreme ends of a boundary that's vibrating. And this is a good image maybe to sort of sink into in your mind when you're vibrating. Like, what is vibration? Why do we vibrate during ritual? What is all this? Okay. And you could see this also sort of like your aura. Yeah. And surprise, surprise, the Vesica piscis appears in religious art of all kinds, especially Christian art. There's a reason for that. It is because the Vesica piscis is this sort of fish shape. Piscis means fish. You can see that here Jesus sits enthroned within a Vesica piscis. Now, this might be quite shocking to Orthodox Christians, but it's pretty clear that the Vesica piscis represents the vagina. It is the doorway between the interior world and the external world. This is not rocket science, okay? We came out of the world through our mothers, out of the vagina, most of us, okay? But even if you came through cesarean section, you kind of came out of this sort of shape, right? And then when we die, we go back in. Okay, and you'll notice that these shapes appear in religious art all over the place, and not only in Christian art, but primarily in Christian art. Okay, now of course Jesus is the Son of God, and he came into the world through his mother. And here we see the mother of God can also be inside this Vesica piscis, because she is the Vesica piscis. She is that embodying forth. The embodying forth aspect of the divine. The aspect of the divine, at least in Catholicism, that will produce an incarnated version of the deity. Jesus comes into the world through the Vesica piscis, through a gateway of vibration. And here's a pagan version. That image is a little bit shocking, isn't it? You can see that the not only does the male god come forth through the goddess, from out of the goddess, he also sort of dives back in and goes back into the unmanifest through the goddess. And also, you might want to picture that when you're looking at a flower, that point in the middle of the Vesica piscis is that point of silence, or the point of stillness. Okay, and that is, and when you look, whenever you look at a flower, the center of the flower can also represent that gateway back into unmanifestation. From out of it, things flow, and back into it, things flow. And lo and behold, this is also, the flower is also the sexual part of a plant. You're looking at the plant's vagina here. And for an orchids look a lot like a human vagina. So you'll never look at a rose the same way again, right? If this is for the Golden Dawn and for medieval style or Christian style imagery of the Middle Ages, the rose was very popular. Especially among the troubadours and that tradition of courtly love that briefly appeared, I guess, around the 1200s or something like that. And of course, the rose continues to be a symbol of romantic love. And in the midst of that rose, if you go to the center of the rose, you can never really find anything there. The petals just keep erupting from it, from that center. But where is the center? It's kind of empty space. Okay, and so when you're doing vibration, it's a way of triangulating in on the emptiness or the unmanifestation or the place where you came from. One way of looking at this is anything that you can see within your perception, your physical perception, is a flower petal. It's all flower petals that constantly interrupting. Where are they coming from? Well, we really can't see where they're coming from, can we? It's sort of an empty zone. Okay. Now, if everything's vibration, then all we can see in the physical world are the endpoints of that vibration, the bulging endpoints of that. Whatever's in the middle there is invisible. And we can intuit this place, and it becomes a sort of gateway where we can sort of go back into the unmanifest. But more importantly for us here, in a magical tradition, it's a gateway through which things manifest, through which we can manifest things. There's a rather graphic representation. Yes, we come out of our mothers and we go back into Mother Earth. We spend a brief time here on Earth, and it's all about coming out of the vagina and going back in again, or coming out of the midst of this field of vibration and then going back into it. And when we emerge, we are nothing but vibration, sort of. Okay, and we always carry some of that middle pillar with us, where we always carry some of that absolute stillness and silence within us. But of course, it's invisible. Can't see it, can't hear it, can't smell it. And everything around us is simply the endpoints of some kind of vibration going on. In the midst of that vibration, there's nothing discernible. And so when you are positioned within the tree of life, because when you do your middle pillar work and you visualize the tree of life around you, lo and behold, the tree of life also is a sort of Vesica piscis. And you could look at it like the middle pillar is like a guitar string, like a vertical guitar string, okay? And when you vibrate, that middle pillar vibrates. It goes back and forth, okay? And the only things that you can truly see with your physical senses are the sides, out to the sides of that. The inside of that is pretty much invisible. It's like pretty much an empty zone of silence and stillness into which you can pass to disappear out of creation, but it's also a doorway through which things pass when they come into manifestation. And what you begin to notice here is that if magic is going to make you a better manifester, well, then you better damn well learn how to vibrate with full voice so that you can embody the principles that you are meditating on. Okay? You can do, much of magic is mysticism, where you disappear back into the Great Mother or into unmanifestation or back into God, whatever you want to call it. But also, it's about bringing things forward out of it. Okay, and one of the really cool things about being an adept is that you learn how to dissolve old versions of yourself. In other words, have them disappear back into the gateway, into the midst of the vibration. And then what happens by itself really is that a new version of you can then emerge forward out of that again. This is not unusual. There are artists out there who are fairly good at this. Artists who periodically reinvent themselves. And so you'll notice they go through a sort of dissolution and disappearing process, and then they reemerge in a new form with a new persona, new theme. Okay, so more or less they're doing what the adept is skillful at doing. So when we're doing magic, are we disappearing into non-existence, or are we embodying something forth that is unmanifest? Okay, so it is important to do both. And in order to be able to embody various forces, it's important that you do things that are perceivable, that you can hear and see and touch. This is why the magician uses physical tools like wands and swords and chalices. Okay, that's why a magician does gestures, because a gesture is something you can see. It's something when you enter this world, you want to move your hand and make a mark. You want to be able to act things out for yourself and for others, yes. It might even help for you to take a singing class so you can really do it. Really do some vibration. Okay, you could even learn how to vibrate like those Tibetan adepts, where we have sort of two sets of vocal cords, kind of. We have the regular ones, ma, and we have the growling vocal cords. I can't do it. You have to train yourself. But you've probably heard some of these Tibetan masters who have trained themselves to vibrate with that. I guess you call that guttural, that sort of growling, very, very deep tone. We have to wonder, why do cats purr? there seems to be some physiological value to the purring that they do, and there seems to be a value for humans as well for you to vibrate forcefully, loudly, loosely, relaxedly, almost like you're purring like a cat. It's probably produces a piezoelectric effect in the body where you can actually rev up, charge up your battery. Your body is a battery, okay, and your body's ability to contain an electric charge is crucial to your health. And apparently, through the piezoelectric effect, you can, through motion and through vibration, you can charge up your body, raise that static electric charge. Kundalini is static electricity. Okay, and your body uses static electricity for osmosis. You would die without it. It's very important to be able to charge up your body and to have a healthy body that can actually hold that charge instead of it bleeding off, into space or whatever. Yeah, as we get older, we tend to lose the ability to hold that electric charge. But you can use vibration for one thing, to keep it up, keep that charge going. Also, there's the triangle, and that's so just as a reminder, it's like, well, you can meditate and then disappear up into the apex where there's nothing but unmanifestation. That's kind of required because you kind of want to be able to triangulate in on unmanifestation so that you can then conceive of what's going to come out of it next. And so a magician is really good at pulling things down. And so the bottom 2 points of this triangle are the 2 extreme ends of vibration. Okay, so when you vibrate, it's a really powerful, symbolic way of tuning into how to manifest something. Not only symbolic, there's something literal to it as well. All right, so you just have to learn this. One of the really cool things you can do if you have friends who are sympathetic to magic and mysticism and meditation, you can get together with those friends and everybody just lie around in the room and lie on your backs and in unison vibrate Aum. Do that for like 20 minutes, 25 minutes with each other. Pretty amazing. You can feel the electric charge build up in the room. So if you want to feel magical energies, if that's something you want to be able to experience rapidly, let's say you're new to the work and you don't feel the energies, you can do that and get together in a group and vibrate Aum together with full voice. Don't be shy about it. And then you can feel the atmosphere and your body charging up in the room, that you can feel this energy. All right, so I hope that's of some help to you. It's important not only to be shy and disappear back into God and like evaporate and be a mystic, you also need to come out and be able to be bold and make noise and make things manifest. It's important to be able to vibrate with full voice in ritual. All right. If you live in a situation where this isn't possible, you might want to make it a goal to get into a situation where it is possible. Other alternatives are to adopt other paths, which might not be effective as sort of left-handed tantric magical paths, but still effective. But also take, an acting class, singing class. Go to your community college. It's pretty cheap if you stay within the state, and learn how to act things out dramatically and how to sing powerfully. These are important skills to have. All right. Until next time.